Welcome, everyone, to the Analytic Mind podcast by Enterprise DNA. This is a podcast which dives into a range of different ideas and tips to empowering a data-led culture within organizations. We want you to develop the analytic mind to create immense value for yourself and your teams. Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of the Analytic Mind podcast. I'm joined today by Chris Wagner. So Chris is a big name in the online space around data and analytics, and particularly Power BI, obviously. So really excited to get him on the pod today. We've had a recent association. I think you've presented at a couple of one of our recent events, which was great and was a really interesting session. So I'm keen to expand on any of those ideas and any of your recent thoughts around how to effectively deploy Power BI, how to effectively develop in Power BI. I think there's a lot of really great things that we can cover today. But Chris, why don't I just throw to you and you do maybe a bit more of an expanded intro about yourself, and then we can kick on into our conversation.
Fantastic, Sam. Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity to get and talk with you and talk with your viewers about a subject that I am super passionate about. But a little bit about background on me for those of you who don't know. I've been working in data analytics space for over 2 decades now. Right now, I'm a director of data solutions at Baker Tilly. So we help organizations when it comes to modernizing their data and analytical strategy. We've got a great program that really help. We call it the Pathfinder program. That's a defined process that really takes people through that modernization process. It's something I'm really excited about. Prior to that, I worked at Rockwell Automation. I managed their Power BI and analytical platform there. Did the same thing at Northwestern Mutual. So I have a deep, rich history in working with large organizations with diverse needs and diverse skill sets and points of view. And I think that's one of the things that I love most about data is because data really brings everyone together because everyone needs data. Everyone uses data, even if they don't know it. And it's now easier than ever before to start using and working with data.
Yeah, I mean it's quite a transformational time, isn't it? In the data space. I mean, we somewhat cover that almost in every podcast discussion that I have. Everyone's just like, wow. I mean, this is just such a transformational time, and I think it's going to be supercharged in the coming years, particularly with a lot of the AI that's coming out. I mean, it's just incredible what's going on. I have to say, Rockwell Automation is a very familiar name because it seems to always be a brand that comes up in any demo of a Microsoft product, particularly in the data analytics space. So I presume you were sort of led that at some point in time.
Yeah. Yes, that was my job. I was the lead of that portion of the organization, and I was very, very lucky to work at Rockwell and to be able to work so closely with the people at Microsoft to put together those demos and assist in those presentations, because it was a great way to highlight all the incredible work we were doing at Rockwell using the tools that Microsoft provides, and it's exciting to be able to see how that's impacting and changing people's lives, because we got to see really firsthand not just the tools in use, but the impacts and the ways that shaped people's careers. And, you know, I saw this young kid. He wasn't a kid, he was an adult, of course. But I mean, just fresh out of college. And, you know, there's a lot of people in that realm who are really struggling for, where do I go in my career? How do I make that impact, right? Like everyone, you hear about that. They want to have a seat at the table. They want to be driving change. And this young man came in and he picked up Power Automate, and he realized that like the bulk of the work he was being asked to do wasn't something he wanted to manually do every day. He could automate it. And he automated, he said over 95% of his job from day one was automated within Power Automate. He went on to automate everyone in his department. And that transformed that department, because now instead of them focusing on all these manual tasks that they'd been doing for 20 years, they were able to get in on those delighters and those customer satisfaction things that that people had been clamoring for that they never had time or resources to get to. And
Mm.
the big impact that meant was when it came time for like, oh, there's a downturn in the economy. They were facing layoffs, and layoffs went through the organization. That was the one department that was like, oh, we can't touch them. Look at how much value they're bringing our organization. So that that guy went from like, okay, hey, I'm fresh out of college to, oh, he's got a seat at this big table, and everyone recognized him as that motivating force for that. And we're seeing that with these low code, no code tools, Power Automate, Power BI is the same thing. We're, tons and tons of stories of people taking Power BI and starting with an Excel, right? Like having that like hunch that there's an issue, or a hunch that there's something that doesn't, I think, smell right. And then they're able to go in and they're able to figure out what the issue is. And if they want a career in data, awesome. If not, fine, right? It's now so easy for people to work with data. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, I mean, I was reflecting on this over my break, because we're recording this just into the new year, to 2023. It's just mind-blowing. It is absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, it has been for a sort of 5 to 6 year period, but then I just like see these AI tools coming out and how they're going to be layered into what has already been done, what is being done, and how more productive you could even be within Power BI and with Python and with Power Apps and Power Query. I mean, it's mind-blowing. It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. Like, it was exciting before, but like that excitement has just been supercharged for me, because everyone is empowered to do 5 times more easily in my book.
Yeah. You can't see it. My camera's not high res enough, but I get goosebumps. It is super exciting. And I kind of often go back to the first blog I ever wrote was like, hey, if you think about where we're at on our data journey, we are in the very infancy of mankind dealing with data. If you look at other professions, like there have been doctors that were doing surgery 2,400 years ago. And that profession continues to evolve and work and move forward. But that's been around forever. And there were accountants that were working, I think it's like 3,800 years ago was the first like accountant things on tablets and stuff. And, so those professions have been around forever. I mean, SQL is 48 years old compared to 3,800 or whatever it is years. Like, we are in such an infancy, and at the same time, we're seeing this radical transformation in even what's gone on there. It's exciting.
Yeah, and every it's an interesting thought, because I constantly, when I dealt sort of more like in sort of live events, when I was doing some training with customers, I always got a little bit of pushback, I would have to say, from a lot of sort of analysts, or just your data professionals who sort of work with data, and it was kind of like, oh, I'm going to automate my job away. I'm going to not have something to do. But I just kept saying this. I kept saying it then, and I even say it now. Even when you sort of see what's happening, even in like recent months with these new AI technologies, you are just going to be able to do so much more. There is always more to do. There is always more to analyze. There's always more optimizations you can create. You've just got to get familiar with what's possible, and you will see it. Why I started Enterprise DNA, I've said this, I think I've said this story a few times, but when Power BI first came out, I recreated all the reporting that had been created over the last like 3 years within my area, within this business I was working in, within about a month. And we had it all automated. And I was like, holy crap, this is actually finally a solution which is going to change the game. And it's definitely played out like that. And the reality is, you can just analyze so much more. Like that there's just so much more opportunity. Like you just got to get started, and you'll find you'll quickly find a way.
Right, and I completely agree. And it is so easy for anyone at any skill level to get started and get working inside of the tooling that it's such a blessing that we have this available to us, and to the world, to be able to work with these tools that are so easy to interact with. And I think a big challenge comes there is like, oh, this is easy to do. Well, Sam, he went and rebuilt all of his reports they built in 3 years in a month. Hey, Tom, here's Power BI. Do what Sam did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not necessarily going to be that easy for every Tom that comes along to do that. And I think there's a learning curve there, and there's still a lot of you need to know about data. You need to know to be able to get deep into that. And I think that's why I'm really excited when I talk about how do enterprises look at working with data and work together to solve the solutions inside their companies. Because
And how do you? So yeah, let's jump into that, because I'm interested, like with because Baker Tilly's a large consulting organization, right? So you're going in from a consulting angle. So how do you start these conversations with particular customers? Because I presume they start quite high level, right? They're starting at a what sort of framework can we implement here to get to our data goals?
Well, and yes, a lot of times we're either engaged from executives and we come in at a high level, or else we're engaged with a brass tacks. Hey, this is a problem. We need to get these things done, right? But if we think about the overall structure, honestly, I talk about it and I frame it up in the same way Microsoft does. Keeps things easier when they hear branding, but think about it on the individual, the team, the department, and the enterprise. How are you going to work with that, and how are you going to interact with it, right? And while at Baker Tilly, we'll probably go into like the engineering and stuff like that. I think the big thing that a lot of companies are missing out on is how do you build a data culture that enables your organization to support broadly everyone inside the company, right? So it's not just the executive who have support, because today, and honestly, for the last 40 years, the CEO, if he had a question, he got that answered. Right? Like if it took 1,000 people to answer that CEO's question, he got that answered. Mm-hmm. Today, individuals in frontline, jobs are being asked to answer these questions with data, and it's now possible for them to do so. And the only way that we can really do that is if we build that community inside that company to help that person take that next step forward. And I think that's a key thing that a lot of organizations miss out on, right? They start with all this engineering and they start with this architecture, but they miss out on what is that end state we need to have in order to transform the business and deliver value. And I think the community is where that really starts.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more. I think what would be really good to dive into is like what are the things that you need to do to actually achieve that? Because I think that is a no-brainer. Like any company is going to be like, yeah, we need to build a data culture that really enhances our decision making. But then, like, what are the actionable ideas and points like to create internally that you think will help a company achieve that?
Yeah, excellent question. First, I like to separate out my profiles because while I'm going to create a community, I think it's important to understand that there's really 3 focus areas that the community should be kind of talking about and having conversations around. First one being data engineering. And that's going to be, how are you bringing data into whatever it is you're doing? And that could just be into Excel or into Power BI or into your data lake or into Databricks, whatever it is you're doing, right? A data engineering community. Then you have that analytics community. And, there's going to be some crossover and some bleed, right? But the analytics communities could be your Power BI developers and the people who just work in Excel on creating, analysis there. And then your data scientists, right? So those 3 buckets, your data scientists, and that include anyone who's working with like Python and R and doing a statistical analysis of any sort, right? So those 3 communities, I think those 3 focus subjects are important inside of that broader data community and culture that you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And then I think it's important I like to have structure before I put together a community, because people like kind of like fit into a river, right? Like a water flows down lowest point, right? A river flows and you can direct it. If you have this in place, it becomes easier for people to communicate and understand where people are coming at from. But then from within there, you have to take people from where they are, right? Like Sam, should I be calling you Dr. Sam McKay? I apologize. I think I've seen like you have like legit like no, okay, all right.
No, definitely not.
All right. But there are people within our organizations that are at that highest level of skill level, like yourself, Sam, right?
Yeah.
We should be recognizing that and making sure that they have everything that they need. But they're not the only ones who are playing in this environment, right? There's going to be the people that are, the seniors, that are engaged. But there's also going to be that day one person, right? That, hey, I just got an internship and I logged into my computer yesterday, and today my manager said I'm supposed to do blank, right? And a community needs to be able to work and operate across all of those skill levels and interact with them, be able to directly communicate, create that mentorship, create that guidance, so that that person who comes in on day one, if they come in and they see what's going on, and like I've been part of a lot of like intern mentorship programs, and a lot of times the interns are asked like, hey, here are some projects we were thinking about. You've been here for a while. What projects do you think would be useful? They sometimes come up with these like grand ideas that sound great, but are really a stretch, right? That community can really help people like funnel and understand, okay, hey, what you're talking about is way too big. That's 4 years of work with 100 people. You're probably not going to deliver that in the next 2 months, right? But if you rescope it and scale it to this is going to be a viable solution. I think that happens day in, day out with everyone across those three categories. That people, when you're trying to take that next step in your career, and it doesn't matter who you are or what level you're at, if you should be pushing yourself beyond what you're currently capable for. But sometimes you don't realize that step's too big, and that's where a good community can help people. Like, oh, hey, that's a bit too much. Maybe you should break it up and do this, or have you considered just going down this path? I think I just absolutely love working in a good data community, and I think it's important to build that in the company. But you asked, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, those are some really good points. A couple of things that come to mind for me on that is, one, I really feel that you broke out those three buckets, or those three segments, where you had the data analysts, the data engineers, data analysts, and data scientists. I want to get your view on, can't someone be all of those right now? Like, isn't that one of the big trends? Is like, because I see this myself, is that you can actually, if you really want, you can be all of those, and you can be a data analyst, but you can do data engineering now. You can do data science. Like Power BI gives you the ability to do all of those if you go up and down the Power BI stack, right? So that's my first comment that I want to get your view on. And then my second question is, well, how do you actually build these communities effectively? Like, yes, is it just creating a Teams channel? Is there some other technology that can really empower this community? Like, what are the sort of like tech or systems you need in place to actually build up and grow these communities effectively?
Great questions. Let me start with, can you be the jack of all trades? Of course. That is one of the great things that makes these tools super effective and super useful. Is it is very easy to get engaged with data engineering, data analytics, and data science. Now, there are some limitations that we all face, right? 24 hours in a day, 365 days in the year. You can only do so much. You can only go so deep in any one of those areas. And there's a ton of people that like going broadly across them. But then there's also people that just like going very deep in some of the areas, right? If you want to go super deep into the data engineering side, God bless, that's great. We need more data engineers. now than we've ever needed before. I saw someone said that like data science was the hottest ticket or hottest career in 2023. I disagree. I think it's data engineering. If you could do data engineering, I think you've pretty much written your ticket for the next decade at a bare minimum until Chat GPT actually implements code, and replaces all of us for everything. But yeah, data engineering, I think is huge. So, but I think you could choose to go deep, and we all have those things that we like and we enjoy doing, and that's one of the things that I do that draws me to, and why I love Power BI is it allows you to go across the entire stack and find out where you fit best, right? Have you ever done Strength Finder, the Strength Finder test?
I certainly have. My wife actually used to work for Gallup.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, once upon a time, yeah.
I absolutely love it. For your viewers who aren't familiar with Strength Finder, it's a test that like helps you understand where are you strongest in, and then so you can focus on doing those tasks and finding other people to do where you're weak in, right? Because it's so much easier to grow where you're strong, very hard to grow where you're weak, right? Like I'm pretty good with data. I like data. I focus on data. I'm not good at spelling. I have spell check. I turn on all that stuff for that, right? Like there's areas where I focus in on, and I do the data stuff. I don't do necessarily all the writing stuff, right? Because we all have those strengths and weaknesses.
And you think, funnily enough, my entire team does the Strength Finder. So we actually use the Strength Finder internally to see what each of us is good at and not so good at. And my wife went on maternity leave, so we haven't sort of done a sort of a feedback. She comes in and like does a sort of gives us feedback and shows us how we can work together well. Just from her knowledge of the system, and we use it quite extensively. So interesting there. So I guess what is your point there to yes, you can do it all, but maybe and this goes for organizational wide. It's a good idea to maybe identify where the more relevant skills are for individuals. Is that sort of what you're getting at?
100%. And the other big advantage of having a community that goes across those three areas is this addresses. You said Gartner. No. Oh crap! Now I forget the name. I think it's Gartner. Gartner said, hey, the best place for data engineering is within your organization. Well, if you're going to find that person who has deep knowledge of your business, who's actually good at data engineering, who's not already a data engineer, a community, a good data community allows those people to shine, and they will shine like the brightest stars in the galaxy once you give them an opportunity to contribute, and you give them an opportunity to like kind of show off, right? Like they know a ton about what's going on in your business. They know a ton about what of data because they live it. It's critical to their lives, and it's an excellent source to find the next leaders and data engineers inside your organization. So it's just a great opportunity for companies to grow and find good resources. So.
And so just to my second question, actionable tech or enablement strategies to build out these communities. That's what I think would be quite useful. So we've identified that building these communities in these buckets is really key. But then how do we manage it? How do we grow these communities so that they're really effective?
Well, fantastic. Yes. So first, like I said, you have your structure. So you put your structure in place. Now, we have more community tools than we've ever had before. So you have Teams, you have Slack, you've got whatever your communication channel of choice that you have. I'm a Teams guy. I don't know. Does Zoom does Zoom have something like that?
Probably not the best tool for it, I would say.
Okay. All right.
Teams is going to be your go-to if you're in the Microsoft universe, aren't you?
Yeah. I use Teams almost exclusively, except for the the occasional Zoom here and there.
Yeah.
But have your community there. And if you're leading this up, and honestly, if you're listening to this podcast, you can start this data culture inside your company, right? If it's not already there and it's not going, start it. Invite people, right? Literally, a community should come from a grassroots involvement. You don't need an executive to say, thou shalt have a data culture. In fact, it doesn't really work like that. You have to do it within your organization. It's going to be up to the people there to start to contribute to get up and running. The biggest thing that I found that helps this is sharing and talking about what you have going on in your day and being very receptive and responsive when people have questions. So start that team channel, invite people to it, market to have people come to it. But then, when you have a question and you're like, oh man, I need to look up some stuff on row level security. Well, okay, I'm going to dig into enterprise DNA's class and row level security. Great. You go in, you watch the stuff, then take that clip or whatever it is you got from that program, share it inside that channel. Hey, was working on row level security for our new sales dashboard. This enterprise DNA, video class was very helpful for me, right? Or the guy in the cube stuff, or whatever it is you found. Share that in the channel and keep that conversation going. Keep that dialogue up, right? So you've got that trickle effect going on. So you've got people that start to talk about it and start to help one another. Now that's your daily trickle. Now, I think it's important to have weekly office hours. I used to call them power hours, where you meet and you dedicate, hey, this is the time we're going to get together as a community and we're going to talk about what questions you have, what's broke, how can we fix it, what do we do there, right? That helps connect people who are lost in the wilderness with someone who has a map. And someone with that map can get you on the right footing in 5 minutes, where you could spend hours and hours, weeks and weeks trying to sort something out, where in that office hours, you're able to get something done just like that. The other advantage office hours offers is allows for people to come together, see what's going on inside their organization, see about new technology that may ignite an idea or spark something inside them to go, you know what? Well, I saw Sam, come out and he was showing me, that, Deneb and some other new custom visuals for creating visuals in Power BI. I'm going to try that. I need that, right? So you go back and do that yourself. And then a week or two goes by and someone comes in and asks that question. You also get the opportunity to then teach it to someone and say, hey, community, yeah, I saw this. Sam demonstrated this last time, but I did it myself. Tom, you're asking, how do you create this custom visual? Let me show you what I learned and I can help you with that, right? So it really finishes that off. And then the last thing I like to have is a monthly rundown meeting. Go over what's new in the service. Go over like choose to have speakers, right? Say, hey, if you have something great you're delivering and building in Power BI, come and show us what you got. Frankly, you'll find, at least in large organizations that have people constantly coming and going, you'll find new bright stars lighting up all of the time in your company. And it's just an excellent opportunity for them to shine.
Yeah, no, those are all really good points, and that is, to me, the basic, has been a successful framework that I've seen many times in large organizations or medium-sized organizations. It's almost where you create a team of super users scattered throughout the organization who can lead these initiatives, and then they drag everyone else along. The most important thing is to keep it front of mind, keep data front of mind all the time. If you really want to embed down that culture, that's how you do it. It's pretty self-explanatory when you really think about it. It's just like anything. If you want something to be really driven as a program, as an implementation within a business, you've got to keep it front of mind. You've got to keep it in front of users all the time. Another just simple way you can do that is make sure that everyone has Power BI in their Microsoft Teams inside of Microsoft Teams, right? So that it is literally one click away. They're always seeing the icon. Make that make their immersion within your data, and then it just keeps it front of mind. Maybe even make sure that like get the right reports into users' emails every single day, so that it's front of mind. Those are the things that we can do now with Power BI. We can create that immersion, and that is a big step in terms of like embedding a data culture. And then when you layer on the community there, boom, you've really created a sort of a transformational movement quite quickly, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the more opportunities you have to interact and show off what's new and what's available, it's incredible. I mean, that when Microsoft rolled out the ability to embed a Power BI report inside of PowerPoint, that I mean, it's so easy, right? Like it is so easy to do it. And if you're technical, you think, okay, it's really easy. But for people in the business, the people who are consuming and working with Power BI reports, knowing that they can now do that changes the way they interact with Power BI. And I think it's actually going to change the way we design and build Power BI reports, because now we're going to have to be thinking about and talk with users about like, okay, how do you embed this into a curated experience so you can highlight and talk about this inside your quarterly review or your monthly review, right? But while it seemed like a small thing, when that came out, I think I did almost 50 presentations on embedding Power BI in PowerPoint, because it touched that many teams, that many people inside of our business. And for people in the technical areas, we think it's no big deal, but for it just it changed so many people. And I'm not even sure people understand how impactful this can be if people realize that this is now not only possible, but so easy for people to do.
Yeah, and that's a common theme all the time. That's just one feature right there, right? But there's lots of other things that are coming out all the time that are quite transformational in the design of your reports, and in the sort of development and the architecting, which is a big topic of mine. There's things happening all the time. It's amazing. And so you've got to have that structure in place, like you're saying, I think, to get that information out to all those within the data landscape within a business as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And I mean, oh my gosh, like the metrics, Power BI metrics. Oh my gosh, the things you can now do with Power BI metrics is unbelievable. With that snapshotting capability of any given metric, that is very transformative, especially if you think about like enterprise reports and like
I would say probably less than 5% of users actually use that feature right now as well. Like that's the opportunity, growth opportunity in just that one feature.
Right. There's so much right there. And it's so powerful. And where's my book? I have I've got a little slide that or a little diagram that I have bookmarked, and I show to everyone, and I don't know how well we'll show this, but this is any MVP deployment. All right. So when you talk about minimum viable product, when it first releases, some aspects about it are going to suck. Okay. It's okay. They're just trying to get it out there to get feedback from people about what works, what doesn't work, that type of thing. Be open to it, right? Like, hey, it's going to be all right. But they're going to take that feedback, they're going to iterate on it, and it's going to get better and better and better until it's an enterprise grade solution. And frankly, metrics long ago moved out of the suck area and is fully into the like enterprise great area. Are there some things it doesn't do? Of course, right? But it is an amazing feature that people aren't using. And this is where a community is great to be able to highlight that and showcase, like, Tom, synced his Fitbit into it, and he's been tracking and setting goals for his workouts and his routines, right? So he's got the API going for in Power BI. Then he set up his metrics, and he was able to like really track some personal items on that, right? Tom's amazing, right? But it's so good.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you because, yeah, I think you've probably had some extensive experience across a range of different implementations, and so what I think would be good to move to would be some inspirational stories. Like, what are some really um, effective implementations, or what are some examples of what you've seen that has been transformational to some of the companies you've worked in or worked with? I think, and we can talk about the Power Platform, or even just Power BI, whatever examples you think are going to really inspire.
Sure. Well, I'll have two. I've got one for Power BI, and I've got one for the General Power Platform. But in Power BI, the amazing thing about the Power BI platform is how the architecture and the software of Power BI is the back end is the same from the embedded Power Query and Power Pivot inside of Excel to Power BI to analysis services to the Power BI premium capabilities. So it's entirely possible for you as a business analyst who has a passion for data and analytics to start in Excel with something small that you build up and scale it up to your team, and then take that model and put it into Power BI and work on it and scale that out to, to your broader, to many different teams, to then scale that up into analysis services for your departments, and then eventually scale that and deploy that into Power BI Premium, and roll that out and service up an organization of 30,000 people. That's a personal journey that I went on on one of my projects, where we went from a team of 1.5 people working inside of Excel, moving to Power BI, and then scaling it up to an enterprise-based solution where there was like 80 people on our team, and building out to managing our models and keeping things refreshed. And we've got a help desk, and we've got like all sorts of things, all working off of that same code that started in Excel and grew and evolved along the entire way. That's just that there are so few tools that are that easy for people to access, and build in, that can scale up to an enterprise grade solution that frankly could scale even, to a global client-based solution, right? That's just amazing. Same thing.
And I would even add there is it is so cost effective for doing all of those things as well. And that is one thing that is not realized.
Right.
I would say by the majority is that so much of that can be done. It's sort of just like an embedded product in the actual subscription you're buying. Like it's almost being done for free, really, because you're buying Excel and you're buying Power BI, but all this like architecting and engineering work, it can be done for basically nothing.
Right. It's just there and you get to use it. And again, I get tingles thinking about the solutions that people can do because it's all built on common tech and common languages and common platforms. And I think we're very lucky that Microsoft started with enterprise products and consumer products, back in the 90s, right? Where Access was completely foreign code from SQL Server, right? They learned a lot from the painful, how painful that is to take apps out of Excel or out of Access and bring it into, an enterprise grade solution. But now we're talking about, Power BI and the entire Power Platform. The backbone is enterprise tooling, right? So you look at Power Apps. Well, what's the backbone of Power Apps? That's Dynamics, right? Like, and all sorts of Azure-based web functions, right? So the example I used was from when I was at Rockwell. COVID hit, and all of a sudden we found ourselves in a lockdown where at Rockwell that we still needed to send out service people to like every factory on the planet was in the process of retooling to churn out, PPE equipment. And so they needed service techs and whatnot. Well, every country, every region had different compliance, capabilities. It was growing impossible to track that inside an Excel spreadsheet. Like, what's going on with Romania, right? Like that stuff, and do we have the right stuff for Tom to go out and visit. Oh, I don't know. Like it was becoming impossible.
Mm-hmm.
One guy on a Sunday said, there's got to be a better way.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday at noon, he sits down. At 8 o'clock on Sunday, he says, I got an app here. I've never built an app before, but I heard about it. I saw a demo of someone doing it in one of our power hour sessions. I think I can do that. And at Sunday night, he sent that email out saying, hey, I think our team and our department should use this to track that.
Mm.
Over 3 days, they evaluated that, like, this is amazing. And it went from a team to a department, from a department to an enterprise within a handful of weeks. And now we had something that started on Sunday and was managing a global enterprise and how they deal with the pandemic. And it was just, it still gives me chills to think about how it was not someone from IT, not someone who was, dealing with code and technology for a living, but as someone in the business who knew there was a problem, knew what all the conditions were, or how to think through all of the ifs, ands, or buts, and grabbed a low code solution, picked it up and ran with it. And it's so exciting.
That's a really good example. And I still, even to this day, don't feel like there is enough appreciation for how historically how difficult that has been. Like that if you wanted to do some quick application and distribute that out widely, you're talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, years of time. And now you can put it in an everyday analyst who has some computer, is computer savvy, can really do a lot of that. I actually saw an example from Microsoft where one single person had built 50 apps within a business and totally transformed it. 50 power apps had basically transformed the entire organization, and they didn't. And all they had to do was spend money on his one salary, and that was it. And like you couldn't even, it wouldn't even have dreamt to be possible. Even a few years ago. And then when you whack on automations and analytics off the back of that, I mean, it's just incredibly powerful.
Well, and if you think about it, again, back to your point about this automation doesn't eliminate jobs, it enhances jobs, right? Okay. IT in the past was tasked with taking on all application and analytics that came down, right? And so that meant if you were in any size organization, even small organizations, and someone wanted something and they were not the CEO, well, good luck. You're 6, 12, 18, 36 months out from whatever it was you wanted, being able to float to the top of that priority list and get done.
Yeah.
What Power Apps does is it now separates out the work, the who can work on things, right? Small little things that can be done in the business get done in the business, right? And so that they can do it and they don't have to because let me go to the other side. If it's something that IT has to do, you got to get business analysts together. We got to, document all this stuff, right? There's a long process that goes into it. If you think about the waterfall days, there were 6 to 8 months of requirements gathering and documenting before it came to IT, because those coders were so valuable and their time was so limited. So 6 to 8 months of getting all that stuff together at a minimum. Then they'd spend a few months building it, and then you'd finally have it. Well, okay, so we went agile. And so now, okay, we're not going to do that. But still, you end up going through a lot of those machinations where IT doesn't know, right? So you still have to go through that. It's still a process. It's longer. On bigger things like a payroll system, or let's say you're tracking healthcare records or something along those lines, right? That's important to do inside of IT. So you manage all sorts of standards and contingencies that, a typical business user might not be aware of. But for all the other requests, though, let's say you want to have an event you want to track all your organizations, and you want an app to do that, and you're not going to buy something, you want something small and build it yourself. Oh heck, you do it yourself, right? You don't need to IT. You don't need to wait that 36 months for IT to pick that up. You can build it in Power Apps. It really helps teams be more efficient. IT prioritize what's important, and business deliver on what moves the needle.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that, but I would even say, like, if you can you've got to build the capability. You've got to build the capability to build these up and also sustain them as well. So that's one trap that a lot of people will say, oh, that's a risk, right? Like someone builds it and then they leave. So you need to really focus on the capability. But I feel like you can create applications, enterprise applications these days that can replace even those heavy duty systems if you really wanted to. Like, I remember in an organization I recently worked for, we had a financial trading platform that we used to capture hedging trades that we did on foreign exchange and interest rates, etc.
Sure.
We paid, I think, $350,000 a year for this software. It was like a very heavy duty software. Honest to God, you could create that in Power Apps and have it more customized to yourself than paying that money. Like, I truly believe it, even now, because that system wasn't customized for how we wanted it. We had to do all these configurations. Every time we called them, it cost us $1,000 an hour to do anything. And the reality is that it still didn't even have any reporting, didn't even have any like fancy dashboards or reports or anything like that. So like we could have made it better, and it could have cost us like basically nothing, just the ability to actually create it. There is systems like this everywhere in organizations. There is like HR systems, there is ERP systems. Like, you could eliminate so many of those and have them far more customized for you. I just don't feel like there's an appreciation for what is actually possible. It is truly unbelievable.
I completely agree, Sam. And I think there's also systems that we're completely blind to, and those are the Sally systems, right? Where Sally, every day at 6 a.m., Sally gets up and does this, right? And every day, Sally builds these things out. Sally copies and pastes. Sally manually processes these things, right? And Sally's been doing that for 25 years. And, Sally's excited because in 5 years, Sally's not going to do it anymore. Well, who knows what it is that Sally actually does, right? These apps allow those Toms, those new people coming in, to look at what Sally's doing, allow Sally to start to wind down the efforts and start to work her way towards retirement as these apps start to get automated. And we now start to get visibility, because right now today we're blind to Sally. We don't know that she's doing these things, right? Because she's doing it herself in her head, and she's hopping from system to system. And technically there's logs, but you don't know what, they're dispersed across all these different systems. You don't know what Sally's doing. These allow companies to capture what Sally's doing and put it into a digital world. So we can now start to at least be aware that these things are going on and how they interact together, and maybe even identify risks. Maybe Sally's been doing this the entire for 25 years. Maybe she's doing something wrong, right? And it's been causing a semantic or a structural problem in the organization that no one has any idea about, right? Not saying I've seen that, but it's a thing.
Yeah. And even one of the other things I would say is that, okay, say for instance, you don't feel like these no-code tools or the Power Platform is enterprise enough, right? It's still in a fantastic testing tool. So instead of spending a bucket load of money building out something from scratch and it taking 24 months, why don't you just build something within a week? Like do a really focused week or two of development inside of Power Apps, mock everything up, mock up the model you need, mock up the inputs, mock up the logic, mock up the automations you want off the back, and then you can iterate to something more enterprise ready if you want. But at least you've got something built. You've got the users, the everyday business users methodology or logic embedded into it. That to me is a much more sound way to evolve into something more complex if you feel like that is required.
Amen, Sam. Because then people know that the logic that is in the system is the business logic that they were using, right? It wasn't just a session with a business analyst, and I'm pretty sure they wrote it all down because Ben's real good at writing things down. I'm sure Ben did a great job, right? But maybe not. Maybe Ben missed something. With the Power App, with the logic put right in, you could see, oh, these are the 87 transaction codes that have to be culled through for this logic to make sense, right? Or whatever craziness that has to be applied. It's codified, and it's codified in a way that the business knows it's right, and IT and actual coders and developers can read and make sure that they're following. So I completely agree. It's a great use case for Power Apps.
One of the other things I want to get your view on, and this is something that I it almost befuddles me, and I thought about it a lot over the break. There is so many companies out there. Like if you looked at the data universe of companies, there is so many companies that are primarily focused on data engineering, primarily focused on data transformations, primarily focused on I'm looking at this image that shows me all these companies that have been funded, and it's in some companies are focused on data analytics, some are focused on building just apps, some are focused on data automations, and some are focused on data science, for example, right? And I'm amazed at how much funding these companies are getting, and then I think, can't Power BI honestly do all of these things? Can't the Power Platform do all of these things? You can query data, you can transform data, you can analyze data, you can build an app, you can create automations. I'm confused, and I want to get your view as to why these companies are getting so much funding, and do they realize that Power BI can, the Power BI universe can actually do everything? Or am I missing something? What can Power BI not do that these companies can do better? And by the way, these companies charge you obscene amounts of money just to connect to their SaaS app, and you're only paying $10 to $15 for Power BI. So explain that. Try and explain that to me.
I'm going to admit I'm similarly jaded about most new tools that come down the path, right? Okay, at the start of my career, someone once told me, all you're dealing with are files and folders, no matter what you're doing in technology. So it's not that hard. And I think a lot of times people are solving problems that they believed existed at one point in time, but that came from a skewed or a view of the world that may not have included everything that was out there, nor what was going on. So I think they're running to an endpoint that's no longer there, right? They don't, Power BI can do all of that stuff, right? A lot of these things and tools are going to, their lunch is going to be eaten before they end up getting there. And I think, I think we'll actually see that, or we'll see integrations. I mean, if you look at, a big piece of technology I've been using and working with the team a lot on is DBT. And have you worked with DBT much at all?
I haven't. I've definitely heard about it many times. But yeah.
So one of the things that the feature I'm thinking of most inside of DBT is it has an automated way to include data validation inside of all the processes. And all you do is drop in if you ever want to write a new validation, it's a SQL statement in a file, into a folder, and you're guaranteed that that's going to run against your stuff, right? It's not some big processor tooling. And I think that's super, super useful, right? Oh, hey, that's great. Until Microsoft says, oh, data quality is an issue. Okay, well, here's the plugin that we put into Power Query and make it universally available across all of our data factory stuff. And then that feature just loses its value, right? And I think a lot of times companies get started down that path, then a new feature comes along, which makes like, oh, well, that whole segment of the world is no longer as valuable as it once was. So,
Yeah, I actually want to share my screen. I know we're on a podcast here, but this is what really like is strange to me. So we're looking at like just a diagram of 50 companies in categories that have been funded with a lot of money recently, and the categories are query and processing, AI and ML, ETL and orchestration, data governance and security, customer data analytics, BI and notebooks, data observability. And I look at that and I just think, man, like, do you even need all this stuff? Like, you can do pretty much everything that you want across all of these different categories with like the Power Platform. I'm just confused. I'm confused but some of these companies are huge. Like some of these companies actually have a lot of customers. And it's just like, why are you paying these guys $1,000 a month for like one seat when you can basically do all this transformation and ETL and machine learning? And I mean, you can use Python, you can build a Python, you can use Python and analytics code, R code, SQL code, you can use it in Power BI. So customer data analytics. I mean, why do you even need that? I mean, you can just like do all that stuff in Power BI, just like with all the other stuff you have. So I don't know. Maybe there's something I'm missing and I need to talk to someone who's like much smarter than me about this. But I just feel like from a business perspective, from a cost to value equation, you can do like basically everything here with Power BI and the ecosystem around it.
Yeah, the Microsoft stack is very hard to compete with. I think where these add value are in certain scale opportunities where people aren't using the Microsoft stack. If someone's on AWS or someone's in GCP, and there's a lot of people in AWS, right? There's a lot of people in GCP, right? So they're pretty much targeting those audiences or scale or niche solution needs, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Like I do agree with that. Like Power BI, I think does cover the general use case. I think they're covering the biggest market in terms of like analytics use cases. And when I say Power BI, I mean Power Platform, really. All of those combined. But I guess there are the singular use cases where you might want to have a more seamless experience for your particular data set. And the particular data that you're using. But one of the things I think about is I think, okay, yes, you might have some unique data. You might have something slightly unique, but do you need to pay 10 times more to actually get that into something usable when you can probably get 90% of the way there with still the things that you have available within the Microsoft stack? Like that's the trade-off, right? Like, yes, it might be something like very edge case, very unique. But at the end of the day, it's just data. Like there's so many ways you can slice and dice it and get almost the same place, like using the tools that cost you $10 to $15 a month per user. Like that is sort of my summation of it all.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think Power BI and Microsoft has a great play. Also, to your point of like, hey, using Power Apps to like flesh out and identify what that ultimate solution should be. I think Power BI and Power Apps also play in that area, but it goes above and beyond just potentially a prototype into something that could be a phase 1, 2, 3, or 4 of a product until you reach that point of customer experience that you want to deliver that is so refined that the tooling doesn't allow for it, right? Like, okay, you want to make like your users insist upon a look and a feel and functionality that doesn't exist inside of the Power BI service, and either, I don't know, some specific visual or a visual interacting with a write back capability. And I mean, at this point, you have to get really niche with a Power BI need or an analytical need that you can't do in Power BI. But those situations occur. But still, you can go for years with a Power BI solution before you reach that wall and say, you know what? that next step we just can't deliver, inside the platform. We're going to custom write an app for it. And and to that point, I would question your ROI. Are you going to get the ROI necessary to really make that a useful that functionality in place?
Yeah, and that to me is like the big question is that, yes, okay, maybe the Microsoft stack doesn't fit your exact use case, but then you've got to weigh up how much is it going to cost you to create what you want and then maintain it. Like, it's probably in orders of magnitude, maybe 50 times more than what it would cost just to build the internal skills to actually just develop on these more sort of like low code toolings. So that's the trade-off. That's the trade-off that I think you have to really make. And from what I can see, I'm a little bit biased. I'm a little bit biased, but I mean, why not go for the cheaper, more efficient and likely more effective version of it?
Well, and Sam, you bring up a great point that a lot of people don't think about on a lot of these solutions, which is the supportability of it. Who's going to run that code when, Tom, who's brilliant, gets a better offer and moves on, right? Like, if it's some crazy Scala package, that's out there doing all sorts of crazy stuff because Tom would, watch podcasts all weekend and then come in and he'd add into the app Monday through Friday for the last 5 years. And he's got all sorts of things spinning up and down because he knows how all these things works. And then Tom leaves. Who do you bring in that's going to have a skill set that spans, the 300 different pieces of tech or crazy things that Tom added in over the last 5 years? It just becomes a real daunting thing for a lot of companies. Whereas in the Microsoft solution, Microsoft stack, hey, these are the bundled solutions. These are the core skill sets you need to have. Much easier to train up, support, have an integrated security model that, is broadly accessible and understandable across anyone working in the space. So you're spot on. That supportability is something that people often miss as well. So,
and that's a big part of, I think, to circle back to the data culture, right? Is like, if you can build solutions with something that is achievable to the everyday user and is relevant to the everyday user, well, that's just another great way to really embed that data culture within an organization. So, to me, it just makes a lot of sense to do the core of your data type work with a more broadly accessible and usable technology stack, and that's really what Microsoft is enabling here, and why. I mean, obviously we're coming from a very biased point of view, so you've obviously got to take that with a grain of salt, but that is sort of my true belief. Like, if I was to, it was years ago, it still is to this day, like if I was to write a book, like I would say, that is the opportunity that, I would put my name on it. I'd put my name on, this is the opportunity that presents to any organization right now.
Well, I'll actually relate that back to how I got started in working on Microsoft Tech. Is I worked in an organization. I owned our data warehouse and BI platform, and it was all Oracle based. We needed to do an upgrade. So I spec'd it all out. And Oracle, you have to buy all the feature packages that you want, and they're hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what I wanted was like 4.8 million. I spec'd it out, 4.8 million. Came back, you get 2.4 million. So I had to cut out all these packages. Oh, well. And then we implement it, all good to go. Month later, 1 month after I implemented that, I saw my first MSBI presentation. This was right when MSBI was first coming out. And I realized that MSBI offered that full $4.8 million feature set inside of their tooling. And when I looked at the licensing costs, I looked at the server costs and saw it was $180,000 versus 4.8 million. I said, you know what? I know which boat is going to continue on in the future. It wasn't on the Oracle side; it was all on the Microsoft side. So I immediately the next day started applying for Microsoft MSBI jobs in the market, and I've been on this train ever since, because that is an integrated solution that is broadly accessible and easy for people to interact with and use, and serves both IT and that enterprise grade, that high level needs, as well as that individuals, is gonna dominate and crush anyone that just fits in at any niche solution. So
no, I think we're on the same page there. So look, we've just hit an hour, I think, and I want to ask you one more question.
Sure.
What are some of the things that really excite you about the future of the Microsoft universe, Power BI, Power Platform, and other things that could be integrated? What are some of the things that you look out in 2 to 3 years time and you're like, wow, that's going to be, unbelievable on top of what we already have right now?
Well, great question, and thank you for allowing me to plug my upcoming video series on data marts. But I think Power BI data marts is going to go GA at some point in time in the semi-near future. I don't know when, but I think that finally finishes off that solution that Microsoft started on with Power BI, a decade ago, of having a fully cloud-based solution that has something for your data engineers, your data analysts. Three to 5 years, I am sure that we're going to see that become richer and richer, more integrated with solutions, more accessible for people, and giving more people the opportunity for them to say, I'm going to do this, to wake up one morning and to change their lives, to say, you know what, I'm this way today, or I've been like this before, I've not liked my job, or I've had these challenges, but this is something I find interesting, and this is something I can get in, and they can get started down this entire path, and they can find who they really want to be and become that in a highly profitable, life-changing career. And I'm so excited to be able to be there to give those hand out, to lift people up, and to get people on that journey, because I think it's going to change lives. And that's what I'm absolutely excited about to see over the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, I think that's an awesome way to round off our discussion. So I won't add anything more to that. No, really appreciate your thoughts there, Chris, and some really good ones. And look, I mean, I'm totally on the same page. I couldn't agree more. You literally could not choose a better career path than mastering the Microsoft stack right now. It's still at its infancy, and it's going to get massive, absolutely massive. Okay, cool. Well, let's round off. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining me on this one. Really enjoyed it. And thank you to all the listeners for being a part of this one. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite listening channel or device. And look, thanks, Chris. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate your thoughts. And if users want to find you, where's the best place or connect with you?
Well, Sam, thanks so much for having me. You can find me at kraiosbi.com. You can find me on YouTube as KraosBI or Data Gods. And do feel free to reach out to me at Baker Tilly, Chris.Wagner at bakertilly.com. Send me an email. Happy to connect and, help you out. So
awesome.
Thanks so much, Sam.
I have no doubt that if you search around the internet and go on YouTube and are in this space, you will find Chris very quickly. But if you want to go direct, those are the best places to go, I think. Cool. Okay, let's round it off for now. Thank you, Chris, and thank you to everyone, and look forward to future podcasts coming up very soon. Okay, take care. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. It's great to be connected, and I hope you are enjoying the content we're creating through the Analytic Mind podcast. If you enjoyed this session, make sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified for each episode as we release them. If you want to learn more about Enterprise DNA and the many initiatives we're working on, check out www.enterprisedna.co. There we have a range of resources to download, events to attend, and information to explore. We're leading the charge around this new paradigm we're living in, where tools like Power BI can literally change how an organization manages, analyzes, and distributes insights that can make an impact. It's an exciting moment in the analytics space. So glad that you're on this journey with us. Take care.